Hey guys, so for a while I've been wanting to start making some videos on Spencerian writing and how to improve one's Spencerian writing. So today I'd like to talk about basically the very beginning most stage of Spencerian. We won't even talk about any letters today, just how to get started essentially and what you'll need. So here is a little piece that I did last night, just practicing particularly some flourishing and stuff. And I've been doing practicing Spencerian writing for a couple years now, but I really like the way that it looks, and I really like having nice handwriting. So I hope that these videos will help everybody else improve their handwriting as well. So basically, to get started, you will need a few things. For the calligraphy and Spencerian writing lessons that I'm going to be doing, I will be using this life paper, particularly for the Spencerian, because the spacing between these lines is ideal for forming the letters in the base size. So these spaces are nearly the perfect size for Spencerian letters. In the standard writing size, of course, it can be bigger, it can be smaller, but generally if you can start forming it on here, then that's a great foundation. So again, that's the life writing paper. I believe that I bought this on jet pens, color white, 70 sheets, horizontal ruled line, and the size is 177 by 250. So this is great paper for writing with a nib with very minimal bleeding. So that's the paper we'll be using. Now, to get started, you're going to need a few things. Obviously, the paper is one of the important things because you have to be able to write, right? So for this one, I want to show everybody how to make a guide sheet for Spencerian. And so the other things that you'll need, and I found having a guide sheet, especially when you're starting, is absolutely necessary because it helps with the slant. So to make our guide sheet, we'll need a protractor here that can measure the degrees. Again, I bought this one on jet pens as well. Very simple, very cheap, but any protractor that you can find will suffice. You'll also need a ruler or straight edge of any kind. And then an ink blotter is not required, but can be helpful once you start writing more, so you don't smudge a lot of the letters. You'll also need a nib holder. I recommend starting with a straight nib holder, but if you have an oblique nib holder, that's an option as well. But I think having a straight nib holder is the best to start with. And then you'll need you'll need a nib. Now, for all of these lessons for Spencerian, I am going to recommend using the Lennert Extra Fine Principal nib. It's made by the Manuscript brand, and these can be a little pricey, but they, as far as nibs go, but they really do last quite a while. You can also find these Lennert Extra Fine Principal nibs on jetpens.com, and they're about $3.50 a piece. So with the amount of writing that I do, these generally last like 2 to 3 weeks before I throw them away. So obviously, if you have a nib holder, the nib goes inside of it, and that's how you're going to use it. Keep in mind that before, if you buy a new nib fresh, you absolutely have to wash off the oil residue, and you do this just by getting some soap, scrubbing the nib with soap and warm water, and then washing it off. And I always do it again, soap and warm water, and make sure to get the underside as well, because that's absolutely necessary to hold. That's the little ink reservoir, and you'll need to do that. So we'll put that to the side for now. Now, in order to make a guide sheet, the Spencerian Slant meaning the way the slant of the letters is 52 degrees. So you need to make a 52-degree guide sheet. And so essentially what you'll do is you'll take a pencil or a pen, whatever you prefer. I tend to like using these little lip pens or any fine line marker because they can be really helpful in showing up as a dark line behind the paper. And you can use, you want to start a little bit down, but essentially you'll make a mark right here, and that's your starting point, right? So the mark is right here. You'll take your compass and you'll set it up and you'll line it up so that the horizontal line aligns with that and that your dot is right in the center. And once you've done that, you'll search for 52 degrees. And in the case of this ruler, you'll see that it's arranged, it has two different sets of numbers, and you want it 52 degrees from the right, not 52 degrees from the left, because that's a backward slant. And so we have 20, 30, 40, 50, and then 1, 2. So essentially what I'll do is I will line those up again, make sure everything is aligned nicely, and here's our 50 mark, and I'll go 51, 52, and I'll make another point right at 52 degrees. So now we've got 2 points on our paper. We've got one here and one here, and that the line that joins them is 52 degrees. So we'll simply take a straight edge, connect the 2 points, and then we'll draw a line. Now you can go all the way up to the header if you wish, or not. But essentially that line is now our 52-degree slant. And all of the downward strokes should be at 52 degrees in Spencerian. So from there, you have to continue to make these lines. So one way that you can do it is you can, this is a pretty thick ruler, so you can line up the back of it as such here. So our line is here, I lined up the back, and then you can draw another line because it's parallel, so that should also be 52 degrees as well. So we have another 52-degree line, and you can keep doing that. Since this is such a wide ruler, it leaves quite a bit of space between the lines, which is fine. So for demonstration purposes though, just know that a thinner ruler might be more suitable for this particular job here. So what you're going to want to do in this case is, since there's so much space between these guys here, all of these lines, we need to also get lines in here, okay? So one way that you can do that, that is a quick and dirty way, is you can measure the distance between these two lines, and this is approximately 1.5 inches. And so what you can do is you can say half it. If I want to put a line halfway between these 2 points, if I put one halfway here and then halfway up here, then I can connect those by a line, and then it will split that in half with the same exact measurements. So while it was, the inch will be a little bit easier, I believe. So what we'll do is just make sure though that, for example, on this case, I wouldn't measure from here to here. It needs to be on a place that has both lines intersecting on that line, because this one does not. So we'll start at this line here because both lines are intersecting this baseline. So what I'll do is I will just half that and I'll do 0.75, right? So we have 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and we'll draw a dot. And then we'll come up here, higher up on this one, and we'll do 0.75 here. It's nice to have a good distance between them just because it's the line tends to be a little bit straighter and better. So again, we have our 0.75 that we are going to use to connect the lines, and that splits it in half. So now I have two more dots. I have a dot up here and a dot down here. So I'll simply connect those by a straight line. Now since I halved this one, I can actually, that means that if I were to use my ruler again as the guide, then if I put my ruler up to this edge, it'll put me halfway between here. So instead of measuring out each and every one, you know, and halving it and drawing those points, now that I halved that, I can actually just use this line, this new line I drew, as a reference and a guide, and then I can draw another line in between those two. So now I've got all those points, as you can see, and I have multiple lines on there. And again, you can keep this going. You can half this even more, and then keep drawing more lines. Now this may take a while, but having a good solid guide sheet is absolutely necessary in order to have good Spencerian writing. So another option, if you're just beginning, that may be really helpful but will take more time, is to divide each one of these lines into three. So you would have your baseline, and then you would add two more lines within here, giving you 1, 2, 3 spots in one given line. And that's important because that is for the height of the letters. And if you're just starting out, you really want to make sure that you have consistent heights, because certain letters have a certain height, and that really helps to distinguish them, and it makes the writing look a lot nicer. So what you could do is measure this distance here, and then divide it into 3, and then set your marks, right? And you definitely want them to be even throughout. But if not, that's totally fine. If you want to practice and just eyeball and say, oh, this letter is 1/3 of the distance, this letter is 2/3 of the distance, this letter is all the entire height, that's fine too. But if you're just practicing, it may be easiest to go ahead and draw those lines in. So now, and you would obviously complete this entire sheet and go all the way down and have a good guide sheet. Let me see, I have a guide sheet here somewhere. So here's one that I've made on another piece of paper for 52 degrees. And you can see that I have multiple lines. This is actually the same type of paper. This is a life paper, and the line spaces are the same. I actually divided them in half just to do bigger letters. So any Spencerian letter is based on 3 spaces. And so in this case, I just divided those lines in half. But you can see this grid can actually be very helpful if you draw the lines through there, because it can really help with the height. So this is the final product you should shoot for. And especially all of the parallel lines, like the more you have, really the more helpful it can be. However, when we start talking more about the formation of letters and stuff, then you'll see that those distances there are actually pretty important. So the distance between each single square that we have here. So anyway, this is what you should be shooting for. This is a 52 degree Spencerian is always on a 52-degree slant, like I said. Copper plate is a different slant. It's only 2 degrees different, but still, it does make a difference. So shoot for this. You can use whatever paper you'd like. Again, this Life paper is what I'll be using for my videos, and I found that it tends to be the best. I forgot to mention one other thing that you'll need, obviously, is ink, a bottle of ink. I found that this Sailor ink, and this is their Kiwaguro ink, I believe. Let me just double check. Yeah, Kiwaguro ink, and this is the black. It is a pigmented ink, and it does very well when you're using it with a nib. So, you know, another optional thing is that when you try and dip into this bottle, it can be get some ink on the side of your pen, and it's messy. So I actually invested in these little tubs here, these little airtight tubs, and so this is the Kiwaguro ink in here, and much wider mouth, and you can dip very easily, or you can just get an inkwell too. So anyway, that is an introductory. Those are all the supplies that we're going to need to do Spencerian writing: paper, ruler, protractor, a fine liner pen or pencil, some ink, the Lennart extra fine principal nib. If there's only one thing you get, or two things you get really to try and practice, you should get a pen holder and a Lennart nib. The Lennart nib is unparalleled in its ability to do Spencerian writing. I've tried all kinds of other ones. The blue nib, this guy, I forget which one it is. It's like the pumpkin nib or something. It's the Browse number 361. That's more for copper plate, and it's kind of a garbage nib. I don't like it myself. And then I've also tried the Rose nib, which is incredibly flexible and not good at all. And then I've also tried the Hunt nib, and it's satisfactory, but the Lennart extra fine principal is the best nib for Spencerian writing. So if you don't have a nib, that's fine. You can totally practice with a normal pen or fountain pen, but just try and get the finest nib or the finest pen possible, like a Pilot High-Tech C. You just won't be able to do any of the flexing. So anyway, thanks for watching. That is the very, very beginning stages and setup for Spencerian writing. And I will be making some more videos just going through the theory and the practice of Spencerian writing in the near future. So thanks for watching, and I hope that this video was helpful. All right, see you next time. Bye.